How's it going, everybody? You're listening to the Let's Talk podcast, the show that brings you the latest in relevant and current trends and conversations about our daily living, the Bible, and also some very fun and unexpected points of view. With your hosts, Joey Santos and Brad Wilson.
Well, we're back. Brad Wilson, my leader, how you doing?
I'm just...
Did you have a good weekend? Come on, show some compassion for yourself.
For what? I'm trying to think of what happened this weekend. It's hard to remember.
Mother's Day.
It rained a lot, so we had to get the house ready. Do a lot of mowing, hanging stuff, moving stuff, cleaning stuff. Other than that, it was relaxing.
It's pretty low key.
It's pretty low key.
It was good. It was a good weekend. Mother's Day is different for both of us and a lot of people that can identify with because we don't have our moms with us. Mm-hmm. For Laura, my wife, it was particularly hard because her mom passed away last October. September last year, October. So this is the first Mother's Day, and that was really hard on her. Mm-hmm. It hit pretty hard yesterday. So I know for a lot of people this year, this time of the year, it's hard, it's complicated. I process things a little different. It has been a year and a half since my mom passed away. Yesterday, I reflect a lot on that and how we all process. I actually. It was a day for me to just remember. I know this may sound weird. I had actually a good time remembering the good things of experiencing my mom. So and it made me reflect on the fact that, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, when you bring back the good memories, actually, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. So we end up cooking. Literally, we cook a few things that my mom used to cook, and we had fun doing it. Mm-hmm. With the kids. Yeah.
Do you think the year having it not being the first one following your mom passing, but having that already going through a Mother's Day?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps. Mm-hmm. The time helps for sure. Is just I more that I think about it, and realizing how much her life was not in my control, and in learning to actually recognizing that and rejoice. So it was kind of fun for me now in a way of accepting the reality of it. Yep. That's part of it. But then, it's almost feel like she never really went away. I think I have a very different situation because I've been in America for over 21 years. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the last 20 years I have not been with my mom every day. Mm-hmm. I think that's different for somebody that, your mom's just next door and you're always there every week in her house and all that stuff. I think that's different. But for me, I think that helped, but it's the way I miss her. It's kind of weird because it's I can relive all the good times we have, even if she's not here. And I think it's just, to me, is the realization that accepting that her life was not in my hands or my control.
Yeah. Typically, would Laura go over to Indianapolis to see her mom on Mother's Day?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was always a tradition there, right? Going and meet up for Mother's Day or, Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. There's some things that we had to change the routine for that. Yeah. And I think every first time thing that her mom's not present becomes so, in 2 weeks is Laura's birthday. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be her first birthday, celebrate her birthday. She's turning 40. She doesn't want a surprise, so might as well just get the word out. Mm-hmm. She forbid me from making surprises for her birthday.
Are you following that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an obedient guy.
Wow. Hold on.
Gonna put your pants up there. It's getting deep.
Yeah.
I follow the rules, buddy.
Yeah, I mean that's rules. That's your middle name.
So I mean, it's gonna. I'm sure it's gonna at some point. It's gonna bring some. So I mean, so much. I tried to surprise her for dinner, and she was so firm about don't make any, don't put surprise anything like that. And I was like, okay, here's where we're going to dinner. It's 8 p.m. Make sure to be there. Oh, by the way, you're riding with me, so yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah, that's not a bad. Yeah, there's some people that they just don't like surprises. I'm not a fan of surprises. People try to pull surprises on me. I'm not interested in it.
I know, right?
I'd rather just know what the details are. So they tried to a couple years ago. People were trying to work on a surprise for my 40th, and I kind of got wind of it. And they wanted to do something. We didn't realize they wanted to do something because we weren't meeting because of COVID.
Yeah.
So back in 2020. But remember, we would come into the building, and whoever's preaching would preach.
Yeah.
And then we kind of show this stuff. Well, it was the weekend. It was actually my birthday was on Sunday, and I was preaching that weekend. And remember, I got wind of it. I was like, hey, remember that idea we had a video in it? And we went over to behind the manor house, and we filmed it over there. Yeah, so I got wind of it because they were going to try to do something in the building afterwards. I was done. I was like, nope. So we filmed it, and I didn't have to leave my house. It was awesome.
I think it's kind of interesting, go along those lines. We are so attached to rituals in our lives. They're not bad things. I'm not saying they're bad things, though. But I think we're so attached to some rituals in our lives, which first, it makes hard to change when change is needed, right? So we just talk about, our moms and many other things in our lives that we get attached to it. It becomes a tradition in our lives and prevent us from changing. And we're in a culture that's constantly changing. I mean, do you see that? I mean, do you see which is forcing the church to change? I think that's the thing we don't talk too much about it, is how the culture today, and even the culture that has been coming for years now, has forced the church to rethink not the gospel. We're not rethinking the Bible principles, but we're rethinking how we do this church thing. Yeah. I think COVID pushed that button really hard and put everything on an expressway for the church. How do you see? I mean, you've been in the ministry for a long time now. How do you see this cultural change and how that it has been impacting the church?
I mean, that's a question with a lot of different answers. I think that some people may say, well, it's made the church worse. I think it's just exposed the church and kind of shown what's always been there. And that is once some of these routines and rhythm and traditions, once those things were kind of just blown up, then it just allowed people to not do them anymore. So I think people, because most churches around the country are seeing a drop. I was talking with a guy last week down in the Loveland area at a Presbyterian church down there, and they're having 30, 35 people, I think, a weekend. And it's continuing to get less and less and less. And we're just talking about, though, how close to the church there's a sports complex, and man, that's hopping with people on Sundays, and that's just the way it is. So I think for some people, COVID it helped free them from feeling guilty or like they need to come to church. So it kind of stopped that ritual, which for us just shows us the influence that we may have thought the church had. The influence wasn't as strong as we thought it was, because once everything happened, then everything's just kind of changed. And I think people now are so used to, if they want information or if they want something, When you look at Amazon, there's a lot of stuff you can order on Amazon, and depending if you order in the morning, it may arrive in the afternoon. Or at least you can look at something on there and you're like, okay, I order this, and with Prime delivery, it's like, okay, you'll get it tomorrow. So all this, people talk about instant gratification for a long time, but we're so used to being able to get our information. We can access our schedules like that. We can, if you're driving home and you're like, you know what, I want some food, but I want to go through the drive-thru and I don't want to make it at home. It's like you can put an order in, all right, I'll be home in 20 minutes. My food's going to arrive in 25. Like, everything's been so convenient. I think for church, to maybe where you're going a little bit now, is people are looking for more ways to access that information. Mm-hmm. Like, it used to be you'd have to show up to something on Sunday to hear someone preach. And depending on where you lived, you may be like, well, the guy you really wanted to listen to, the person you want to listen to preach, you're like, well, I'm not going to drive 3 hours to their church. So some people would go old school, they maybe order tapes or something. But now with technology, you don't have to leave your house and you can just listen to them, whether it's through a podcast or some online. So you're getting everything so quickly that it used to be like Sunday and the church, that was the place, that was like the marketplace of exchange, right? Where you get the teaching, you get the message, you get all that stuff. And now,
I know
it's different.
But do you think that definitely? I think we can say that COVID exposed some of the impact that religious behavior has had in our lives, and we're attached to those behaviors, right? We're attached to those things that we always do. I think exposed some churches that are actually requiring some behavior that was like, oops, that was not needed.
Yeah.
And in order to worship God. But let me ask you this, though, because the point that you make about we can, write it here in my hand, I have this phone and I have access to any information I want to, for the most part, and I can listen to the message, any message from any other church. When it comes to our traditional way to look at worship, how do you reconcile that with the new technology that we have today? Like, how do we look at, am I missing something if I'm not in church in person? What am I missing if I'm missing something? What is it? Because somebody may ask, what's the purpose of being in church then if I have all the information in my hand?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the information piece is the first thing that people are missing, because God's less about acquiring knowledge, information, and wisdom, and he's more like he's more about what do you do with that, and how are you doing those things. And so I think like worship's another example of it, of the because you can listen to I've listened to, sometimes you've got a very random playlist in your office of music on there, but it's like if there's good music, if there's good music, you can get kind of locked into whatever the song is. But the thing people miss, and this is a word that we've used a lot around here, and I know that you're experiencing it, and it's taken off even more on Sundays at church at the bar.
But let me ask you this though. Then describe to me what a church service should look like. Like so what is?
I don't know how much it matters. There's a staple from the Bible of the preaching.
Yeah.
And you throw some. There's some music in there because there's the part of you get people together and it's acknowledgement of who God is. Mm-hmm. So there's this idea of we've confused music and worship.
There we go.
Worship is a multifaceted word.
Yeah.
But to me, the biggest thing of like people coming on Sunday for worship, and the reason you get together, it's community. That's the driving force. So that's a completely different argument than or a conversation than the whole worship piece. But we've boxed worship into like 20 minutes.
Into the music portion of it, right?
Yeah.
Which again, we should go there. Since we step into it, let's just go there.
All right.
Right, because again, is music even relevant in church these days? Is it relevant at all when a church serves on Sunday?
Oh, I mean, I think it's relevant.
For what? Because I really, for what? Why is it relevant?
It's relevant because it helps to when you come in the things with God. I mean, if God created us with, and He's given us the five senses. It's just a part of, and maybe the term you're looking for isn't as much relevant as is it necessary. And so depending on what it is, you can say, well, it's situations and places. It may not be necessary, but in others, it's relevant because it helps people. It helps people get going, or sometimes I think freeing up any obstacle that keeps them from connecting with God.
Okay. Do you think then its music should have a very intentional purpose to drive people into the presence of God, or experience God for who He is, or a combination of both?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. Because not to get too theological with this, but one of the things when people are like, oh, in the presence of God, I mean, by technicality, with God being omnipresent, He's everywhere. So, we're in the presence of God right now.
Okay.
Or He's in our presence, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get there to Sunday, but I think it's part of it's like you have some people that, you just look at people in general, learning styles, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some kids that talk about in school that learn better from hands-on.
Yeah.
There's other kids that they can learn from instruction. There's other kids that learn from like a hybrid, a combination of both. And so I think the worship aspect is, there's some people that appeals, that hits them in a sense that gets them, I don't know if right frame of mind is the right term, but it's kind of different for everyone. That's why I think it's kind of a combination.
Oh, I was looking at Romans chapter 12, verse 1. And it talks about, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear this verse, and really comes to mind is how we present ourselves before God. In every shape and form, how He created us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see you tell me if you think it's different though, if emotion plays a role in that. I mean, the Bible talks about our worship being a rational worship, being orderly, right? And I think for too long, and again, we're going to step into some muddy waters here. It's going to get, do you know what I mean? Just get ready.
It's like outside in the grass right now.
Exactly. I'm saying, do you think, in a way, I'm not saying Christ Church, I'm saying the church in general. Do you think, in a way, we have used music as a way to reach people in an emotional level and not in a spiritual level, as the Bible describes?
I mean, I can answer that question. I'm curious what you think about it.
I think it's built. I would say this. I think the music, the culture of music in the Christian music, has really learned from the sacred music, the aspects of emotion in the composition and songwriting, because you can see the evolution of Christian music and how it has developed. Compared to how it used to be before, they talk about 7-11 songs, like seven words with 11 verses, and that's what feels like some songs. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's built. I think this is my personal opinion, though. I think some worship songs today, they're built more to drive you to an emotional state than a spiritual state. Mm-hmm. And you can just again, you just follow the structure of it. And I know this may get a little too technical. And again, it's just my personal opinion. I think when you get a song like Blessed Assurance and look at the lyrics of it and what it says compared to how songs are written today, some of the songs that you cannot compare in terms of the lyrics, but much less the arrangements built to drive you to a point emotionally. And I really think that we should look deep into it to verify, are we actually using the songs to actually give people a direction, to give people an experience, to drive. And I'm not saying every song's like that. I'm not saying, but I'm saying I think we kind of learn. We learn from the secular world how to do this thing using the environments that we're in, right? Using the setup that we have, and how we lead songs sometimes, and how we and like, are we trying to reach people's emotions, or we are actually trying to drive them into a spiritual point, a spiritual reflection that truly has experience with God? Let's come back right after this short break, and I'll hand it over to you, see what you think about that. It's official. CC Life Plus has launched, and we truly feel blessed to be able to reach people in and through the new way of online living. What makes CC Life Plus even more special and better all around is that it is for everyone. This platform has kids content for students, podcasts, music, and traditional content to help you grow as Christians. So there really is something for everyone on here. We hope you have had a chance to check it out. If not, please do. We'll be adding new material monthly, and we'll post on the social media channels when we do, so make sure to subscribe and follow our social media channels so you know when new content is released.
And so, what was your question again? God, that was a long break.
Oh man, that
was a long break.
Is like you look like you're testifying before Congress right now.
Long break
can you
right
repeat
there.
the question, please? I mean, are we? I was talking about the aspect of music in a worship service, and how much of that is catering to our emotions than to our spiritual lives. Do you think, or do you think I'm crazy?
I mean, I think an argument that some people have made and other people have talked about is that there was a shift in music as it became more popular. Like if you look at, some people say with the hymns that in the church you would come in and the hymns were more vertical. There was us, and then there was God. So the worship was vertical. That, and a change has happened now is this kind of lowered God down, is more horizontal, right? So it's like going from, instead of it being more upward, it's more like, hey, we're God's here, He's here with us. When I was in high school, people were a big thing going, and then when I was in college, we're going to retreats and people using the phrase, Jesus is my homeboy. There's that funny song, there's memes of it, Jesus is my friend or whatever. And like this stuff is true, but I think maybe what you're getting at is as we've gone on, have we lost this idea of Jesus as, Lord with it, and from an emotional standpoint. So I think that there is a part of, there was a book I read years ago called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And it talked about how when you see like some of the Christian radio stations, they've got a specific target in mind. And it's not 35-year-old guys. It's moms driving around, and this is a sweeping statement, but it's moms driving around with a couple of kids in the minivan. And, the messaging, positive and encouraging, K-love, whatever that is. So I think that I think what the church did is the church decided, okay, we have these communicators who are very good at communicating something. And so in order for them to get what we want the people to do is we'll have some really good music, and we'll kind of get people going emotionally. And then we'll have these speakers come in, and we'll have them just deliver deliver a great message that's easy to grasp, and we'll play off the setting, and then people will go out and do stuff. then they'll respond to it. I think in some ways you could say that's like the maybe that's not the theme, but if you just look at churches all over the place, that's kind of the method that had happened. I mean, that's what happens at a conference, right? You go to. That's why I wasn't a big fan as a kid going to some of these things. So it's the same song and dance. It's they get these kids worked up, and then they got great music and everyone's into it. Speaker comes in.
Well, that's true, right?
Tells you how bad you are.
We
and
go
you're like,
to
I
church
change.
camp.
Yeah.
We go to church camp, and then you have this, 24/7, 5 days of a pretty spiritual high. Mm-hmm. And then we come back, and you stew there for 3 or 4 days. And after those 3 or 4 days, it's like, shh.
Yeah.
It's back to Tom Brady, deflated balls, where it's just out. So that's what happened with this kid's going to, and I agree with you. So I think the problem with that is that we're trying to replicate 5 days of worship experience to 1 hour service every Sunday.
Yeah.
So how do we break that pattern, though? Is it possible? For today's culture, think about this. It's been 2 decades of this change.
Yeah.
Can we go back to whatever that is, or can we not even go back? Moving forward, what do you think the church gathering on Sundays should look like, considering that we're aiming for people to first and foremost build community with God? What would it look like to you?
I don't know if you need to. I don't know if you need to change a whole bunch of things. I just think some of it is that you, where it goes back to is just more, being, because you look at the early church and it said that the believers that they gathered together, they were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Some people will debate you that. Some people say, well, the breaking of bread was communion. No, these people were just getting together, having a meal, and they were praying. So it's if you look at if you look at what's going on in the church, I don't think what we there's nothing wrong with gathering and praising and worshiping God. I think some of it is from the standpoint of churches thinking strategically of, okay, if we're going to talk about this community and we're going to talk about these things with people, going back to what you said, is this worship and the Romans 12, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. That is your true and, different translations, true and pleasing act of worship. I think the idea is helping people to see how they can serve each other, how they can serve in their communities. And Sunday morning has the opportunity at all the place, I think, to be transformational. But I think the change that's probably needed is to make sure the transformation's focused. It's less on a self-help and more on a others serving transformation, because that's what you're seeing we're going through James. That's what we're seeing there in the church, or in James's letter. He's encouraging these people. He's since God has done all these things, and since Jesus has changed your life, that means your focus shouldn't be just on yourself, but it should be on others. And I think sometimes in church, we just do a good job of making the focus on ourselves and what we need to do instead of for ourselves, instead of what we need to do for others.
And we talk about that at the Church of the Bar very often about, in order to have a relationship with God, we got to have time in the Bible. And Scripture comes alive through us, meaning that's how we impact other people's lives, by making Scripture known by who we are. So, Scripture is going to come alive in our lives, but that's an outward expression of who we are in it. Yeah. And I think that's what's missing a lot in the church is it's that kind of teaching in general. Church in general is churches, we talked about that before. They abandon the Bible. They start, trying to expedite the teaching and trying to make the teaching like more like a TED Talk experience instead of just teaching the Bible, which is something we're not ashamed of. Like we talk about that, we're not ashamed of saying that's what we're going to teach and that's who we are. And if you don't want to, if you don't want to be taught from the Bible, that's not a church for you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that pure and simple. If you're here to be entertained, you definitely not going to be entertained here. We don't build we don't craft our weekend experience based on entertainment. But I think that's part of the challenge out there, that people not being able to really truly experience God. We're there together on the weekends, on Sundays, whatever day they get together in their churches. It's probably because the basic components of worship experience is missing. And one of them is the spiritual formation side of it. That's like the Bible teaching, right? In a music that's focused on that, on driving people to have that experience. I'm not against, let me make clear, I'm not against those modern worship songs. They're great. Some of the songs, they're great. But I think they're being used to drive people more into an emotional response than to a spiritual response. And a spiritual response is much more internal first, and then it becomes an external thing. I think that's part of what's missing. We're so focused in immediate external response. And that external response I think we're being expecting is during the service. Is expecting people to give that response right there, thinking that's going to do the trick. I really hope that the church can start looking at, am I really getting the message of the song? Is this song really speaking to me? And what does it mean when I leave the building? So I can really be the church when I'm outside the building. And I think that is where the church needs to be heading into. And it's going to look different. Then we're looking at a different church. A church that goes back to Acts chapter 2. I think we don't have people breaking bread too often together. I don't think we have people fellowshipping that much with the purpose to be together because God's there. I think people are doing some things, but not with that purpose. Yesterday at the church, the bar, I told people, I said, hey, one of the ways for us to reach the lost is for you to show up at the bar when it's not church service. Show up at the bar, wear your church the bar gear, and hang out, and allow people to ask a question while you're wearing the T-shirt. Last Wednesday, after the Bible study, I went up. We met in the basement. So I went up and talked to the owners, Mark and Amy, and they're talking to this guy at the bar. And as we talk, Mark said, hey, here's the pastor of the bar, it's Joe, and the guy started laughing. And he's like, oh, you're kidding. And the guy said, no, I'm not kidding. He said, that's the pastor. He's like, what are you saying to me? Then we have a church here, and then we got into that whole conversation. And 5 minutes later, the guy turns to me and said, so you're a pastor for real? I said, yeah, I'm a pastor. We meet here, and I'm a pastor. And he immediately, his next question to me was, can you pray for me? And I was like, absolutely, and tell me what's going on. And right there at the bar, he shared with me what was going on. And right there at the bar, I got to put my hand on his shoulder and pray for him. Now, I don't know how many bars in America on a Wednesday night somebody's praying for somebody else. I hope there's more.
Yeah.
But to me, that's how we get out there and show people what we mean when we gather here Sunday morning and worship God.
And I think too, like you said, with it, it's also shifting the ideas, because I think that, and sometimes maybe we overlook it, but going back a couple weeks ago, we celebrated 20 years of, there's this ministry, the Bears Ministry, where just an amazing group of volunteers have been putting together, build these bears, and originally started off, people dealing with loss, and some of these bears are people that are battling cancer any kind of difficult circumstance. And to me, one of the things we said over the years is we've talked about believe and I think you have a sticker that says believe and respond.
Yeah.
And that's what was amazing that Sunday, that 20-year celebration, is kind of talking about it, but with the people, of getting them to grasp this idea of, okay, with these bears, it's a way to, as crazy or as simple as it is a way to sending these things out. Like, people are sponsoring them, and you can go give it to someone and say, hey, it's an opportunity basically for some people maybe have an introduction to God. Just let them know, hey, we're thinking about you. We're praying you. We're praying for you. It's a visual reminder. And so that day, I mean, all these people afterwards, it's like after the service, hearing that, we're like, okay, let's go ahead and do this, because this is something. They sponsored them. They gave those things out. And so I think part of the challenge for us, here at Christ Church that we're trying to do, and I know you're trying to do this at the bar, like you said there, is getting people to me, the real challenge, and you get to that spiritual act of worship, is being active outside of the 9 to 12 a.m. window on Sunday. So if it's at church at the bar, coming up during the week, like you said, wearing your gear, having some conversations with people. I think it's about having and creating some opportunities for us to actually do things in the communities or with the people, because that was the New Testament church. Mm-hmm. It's a focus on not just, there has to be more happening than just what's happening on Sunday morning. Like, if that's all our involvement is, or our happening is we're missing the bigger picture.
So let's then give people some direction here, though. What would you tell people? What kind of mindset they should have as they're listening to this podcast, and it's Sunday is coming, and they're going to be somewhere. They're going to be in their local church. They're going to be in their church that meets in the school. They're going to be somewhere Sunday morning with the intent to worship God. What kind of mindset people should have going this Sunday?
And I think one, we should approach it with there should be an excitement. There should also be like a gratefulness of, hey, I'm getting to go do this, but also with a purpose of thinking, when you gather together with people and wherever they're going, a purpose of, okay, God, I want to, going back to that verse, I want to offer myself as a living sacrifice. Is I want to do more than just consume things. I want to hear from you, but I also want to be someone that's doing something. Like, I want to offer myself to you wherever you need me. And I think going in with the mindset wherever they're at of, okay, God, I'm going to be very focused on, whatever you're calling me to do, whatever I feel compelled to do, whatever I'm feeling led to do. If someone comes and asks me to do something, man, I'm gonna respond to that and do something about it. Like, going in with that mindset of more along the line, God, I'm yours. I'm grateful for what you've done, and I want to show you how grateful I am for that, because I'm going to do some things myself. And I think if we went in with that, of less of a, okay, what am I going to get out of today, and more like, hey, after today, what's today going to help me give? Then I think we would start noticing a little difference in the church, at least in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
Oh, yeah, and I think it is, and I think it's changing, and it's changing for better and good. And I like I said, just this last few months, I had the opportunity to lead the student ministries as we look for a new student pastor, and to see how volunteers are jumping in. And not only that, like in the last 2 weeks, we had 5 new volunteers. We're not asking for it. They just said, I want to serve in this ministry. I want to serve here. So you see people wanted to do, they wanted to serve, they want to be part of it. They're trying to live out what they're learning. And I think, yes, you can see the difference. You can see that change, and I think it's continue. I think put us in the right track in terms of what we wanted the church to become. What we wanted the church right here in Mason to become for the Mason community. Now we never lost the vision of globally. That's why we invest so much into the online campus, right? So it's streaming or CC Life Plus and the other venues that we're working on. We never lost sense of that. So we still, I think we always been a church that loves our community locally and globally, and want our community to be together, to do worship together, to do life together. I mean, you got food trucks. We're approaching summer season. The end of this month, we have our first food truck event. So we look forward to just hang out, just hang out together, be part of what God's doing. And I think that's what the movement that we're seeing now. And I think there's more of that happening. Regardless what that looks like, it's going to look different to every church. When I had churches come and talk to me about online church, I said, don't copy what we're doing. Understand what we're doing and why we're doing, and see how that applies to your church, to see what you can do for your community. And I don't like copying what other people are doing, because we have a very unique community. Like every church has a unique community because it's theirs. It's their community. So you have to look into your local. There's a reason why we call it local church. and I believe that we are a local church with a global vision. We're never going to stop being a local church, and we're never going to stop having a global vision for the gospel. So I like the direction. I like where we're going.
That's a good answer.
Well, you asked me a question. I don't
know. Here's another question. Have you listened to the Pigskin Pastors podcast?
No, I have not listened to that. I'm not an NFL, but let's talk about that before we close. That's a big deal coming up. You guys are ready. You and our producer right there, he keeps wearing this ugly hat. I don't know why, but that's totally fine. It's okay. It's a free country. People can do whatever they want.
I mean, it's a good-looking hat down here in Cincinnati.
I like to mess with him because I know messes with him. Do you know what I mean? It's just he comes alive.
Yeah, I would love to look at him right now, but I know if I do that, since this camera's going, I'll get reprimanded like last week.
So talk about this new podcast, two pastors talking about football.
We're just talking about football, and we're talking about a lot of stuff. So the first one, we just recapped the draft, Bengals and the Lions, because that's obviously I'm a Detroit guy. Jeremy's a Cincinnati guy, and so we talked about that. But then we're going to get into that, obviously football stuff, especially as it gets closer and closer to the season. But then also with some of this, we want to kind of go and have some people join us. We had a young man, Caden Evans, who's going to play football next year in Michigan at Hillsdale College. He was on the podcast, so we had someone that has played football and a lot more recently than us, who's playing football, as he's talking about. But also we've got a number, which is interesting in our church. We've got a number of guys that have played football, former collegiate players, some currently playing college, some that have actually played some former NFL players. And so one of the things we want to do with this is just also talk about not just football, but how faith and football kind of intersect.
Okay, so how can people find you on social media? You guys on social media, right?
Yeah.
How can find you? Come on, Brad Wilson. Now is going to show people how we use social media. Go for it.
I mean, we pretty much have Instagram, Facebook, the Pigskin Pastors podcast.
At Pigskin Pastors.
At the Pigskin Pastors.
At the Pigskin
podcast.
Pastors. So we make sure to put that in there on the description for people to learn and see it.
Yeah, or if you want to go to Facebook, if you're friends with me, go to Jeremy Braley's page, my page, and you can get
listen, people. I don't like NFL. but I know I'm the minority here for so many reasons. So I think absolutely everybody
you like the Brazilian NFL, National Football League.
I'm all about supporting everybody what they like. So people like football should go listen to it. This is not a religious podcast. Let's just make this clear. This is real guys talking football.
Oh yeah,
it's just the difference is they're pastors. So
some people think
it's going to be a PG program.
Some people think we don't know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Like I said,
there we go.
If I wasn't doing this, I'd be on the sidelines in the NFL.
And I heard the first episode already. You guys already published, and already beat some other podcasters out there that like used to be very famous. So that's great. That's fantastic. I mean, you guys already starting on top. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. This is great. We'll talk again next week. We'll be back with Let's Talk on Cis Life Plus, the podcast everybody should listen to.
Thanks for joining us this week on Let's Talk Podcast. Make sure to check us out at ccliveplus.com, where you can listen to past episodes and subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And one more thing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating on iTunes and tell someone about the show. Until next time.